G'day trendsetters. Today I'm coming to you from Brickyard Bike Co in Phenix City, Alabama, just across the Chattahoochee River from Columbus, Georgia. Good mates of mine. That's Pete right there. You might have seen him in a few of my videos. Today we're building a road bike. You heard it right, it's a road bike project. It's a collaboration with Shimano and my friends at Lynskey. Namely, we're going to be building the sort of new Ultegra R8170 Di2 group set. Let's get cracking.
All right, so we got everything organized on my surgical table here. It's a new technique I'm trying other than spreading it out all over the bench tops, and you know, we keep everything together. Everything's accounted for during the build, so we don't run into any hiccups during the build like we did during our first Ribble build, when we were missing front derailleur mounts and yada yada yada.
It was a bit of a mess.
What was that, 2020? That was pretty common back then.
A while ago.
Doing some prep before the build, putting anti-seize into the bottom bracket threads. This is a titanium frame. If we were using alloy components like bar and seat post, we would need to use anti-seize and a little grease. Again, because we don't want to fuse our non-like metals together. All right, so put some carbon assembly paste on the stem, the handlebar here. This is a funky little stem here in that it's got, it's like a three-piece stem instead of just a single face plate. You get this lower part and this upper part. It's threaded in from above, and then the bolts go kind of hook into the bottom there. I've got the same bar and stem on my road bike. I've got a Honda ALR that's under 16 pounds with full of water bottles, pedals, you know, all this stuff. Because you don't just weigh a bike without pedals and without bottle cages, because you don't ride like that, do you? Unless you're a damn camel. Bar and stem installed.
Beautiful.
It's easier to do it off the bike than when it's on the bike, so you know, everything's together.
Alrighty, Pete's mounted the seat post and the saddle.
And got our shifters on our bars. I just kind of like pre-installed them, so we're gonna run brakes through the bars, through the frame. I just need to put these on the handlebars before we do that, so we can run them to length. We're also gonna have to cut the steer tube before we do all that. In the meantime though, I'm gonna get the wheels set up too. Super easy, just slide your center lock wheels and rotors, and they come with lock rings. Your SRAM builds typically don't come with lock rings.
Pete, do you recommend grease on those lock rings or not?
You can, certainly can, but you don't need to, not that I've been told. All this cassette as well, it's got like basically a free hub body. You can line up the cassette, just drop it on, and then you gotta pull the last guy off with the lock ring.
This ratio is 11 to 34, 12 speed.
That is correct. This last one's always the trickiest one to put on. Here we go. Got that little bugger. Hand tight, and then we'll hit everything with a torque wrench at the same time. We do the rotors and the cassette. They all use the same lock ring. Put the wheels aside.
Peter, we've had to improvise here. Why is that? Because Lynskey, well, someone forgot to drill the frame, but that's okay. So we have been instructed on where exactly to, in this case, punch the frame, then drill a hole for the Di2 cable.
So we're gonna measure it 110 to 115 millimeters from the center of the bottom bracket, right about there. I'm gonna drill it on the back side of the seat tube. Just a little bit cleaner that way.
Ordinarily, folks, these bikes arrived drilled. There was a bit of a goof, but we will press on regardless. Pete, you ready to go, mate? Safety first.
Safety first. Oh yeah.
Always clean up your drill hole. Pete's cleaning up any bits of titanium inside the shell. Jam in the sandpaper. Safety first.
So we drilled our holes. What I'm going to do next is I'm just going to install the derailleurs and then the brakes. I'm going to do everything except for I'm going to leave the bottom bracket because I'm going to need to route wires through the bottom of the frame. Just kind of loosely getting everything mounted right now.
Run the derailleur mount.
Got a braze-on adapter because this frame takes 34.9 front derailleur clamp, 34.9 millimeters, and then these Di2 derailleurs are almost always brazed-on mounts. Okay. There we go. It's installed. Crucial part of building a disc brake bike build is knowing, okay, so we've got a caliper, but they don't come with adapters to run a 160 rear rotor. So we need this little flat mount 160 adapter. The SMMAR160D/D. That's fun to say. And then we need to also measure out our brake bolts. Most bikes come with let's see, looks like a 35 millimeter brake bolt. Yeah, 35s. This frame has much thinner dropouts. These look like 25s. So we need to run shorter bolts. That one's too long. Measure this guy. Look at that one. That one's about perfect. So we have gotten our correct bolt lengths. See, we got full engagement of the threads into the adapter. And what we're gonna do is just get it snug. A nifty little Pro internal routing tool. It's my favorite one so far. They're all generally, like Park Tool makes one. I'm sure Pedro's might make one, but this one comes as like a little multi-tool. So everything's all neat and wrapped up together. There's only one wire and you just change out the fittings based on what you need to route. So like right now we're routing a brake hose, so I got a threaded barb for that. There's also a Di2 fitting, although I don't have the one for the new Di2 wires, which are quite a bit smaller. So it's gonna be tricky routing these cables through the frame, but it'll be all right. We'll figure it out. I've faced worse odds before, so just thread it into the hose here. Got a bit of a nest here. So we pull hose through the frame. And I'm gonna leave it attached. That's it, all routed through. And then we gotta route it through the down tube. So take our little magnet. Oh, it doesn't seem to like my big guy anymore. Maybe it's ported through there. Must be ported, so just shove it right through the frame. We didn't need to use our tool.
That was way too easy. Right now we're feeding the front derailleur Di2 wire to ultimately connect to the seat tube battery. And because these new connectors are pretty small, we can't attach the routing tool. So we're using gravity to assist us in this task. The problem is the wire likes to twist and kink around.
So we get the cable through. This is the front derailleur cable. Next we're gonna do the rear. I need a little bit of teamwork on this one because it kind of steps down to a larger diameter right about here, so the cable like to get kinked up there. So connecting this wire, snapped in, and we start routing our wire, our derailleur wire through the frame. Just twist it, and then it should just pop right out.
Oh,
There we go.
nice
The
one.
twist.
Nice one.
You know, they have a Scandinavian flick. You just call it the Scandinavian twist. Poke the wire through the hole we drilled, up through the seat tube, and then we're gonna play the same game that we did with the front derailleur and trying to get that thing to go up to the top. Give it a little twist. It's still stuck right on that reducer. Derailleur cable wire through this seat post. There it is. The wire to this little yoke.
Not the cleanest execution, but this yoke does give a considerable amount of tire clearance, I believe. Well, at least on the gravel bike it does. We're gonna see how big of a tire this bike fits later.
Get my flush clip pliers. I'll just file that down later. So I got the wires routed to the battery. This is the battery. This is the wire that goes to the rear derailleur. This one goes to the front derailleur. That's important because we got 3 ports here. One's our center one. That's the one that we want to route the rear derailleur to. So think of your rear derailleur as your brain now. You don't have junction boxes like we used to in old Di2 hanging out underneath the stem or in the bar end. It's all integrated into the rear derailleur. You got your function button. You got your charging port right here. Everything's gone through the rear derailleur now. So in order to route this battery into the frame so it doesn't fall out into the seat post, just gonna route that guy in there, put a little snap ring that comes with the Di2 battery in the seat post, just like that. Carbon paste in there on the seat post and on the seat, inside the seat tube. I kind of feed these down this way so they don't get bunched up. Just gonna leave it like that for now. Yeah, so I pulled some slack out to feed the seat post into the frame. So I'm just feeding it back in, making sure it stays tucked in there. And I'm gonna go ahead and install the bottom bracket and crank set. Put the bottom bracket together. This is just a standard BSA. It is left-hand thread on the drive side. We're gonna just feed our sleeve around the cable. Make sure this cable here is going through the bottom bracket shell, so just be careful about that. And then I'm gonna back thread it and then thread it in. And then I'm gonna thread in the non-drive side, which is right-hand thread. Starting to get into that thread lock tape that they put on the threads. Takes a bit more force, so I'm taking the wrench out. I'm gonna snug the drive side. Get it snug. Got the torque wrench dialed up. You can find your torque specs at si.shimano.com.
We love that pop sound.
Well, that's a good quality torque wrench right there. Loosen up our axle. Slide it through the frame. Ooh, look at that. Let's give it a tap. Slide your other crank arm over. There we go. And take your preload cap. Don't drop it. And these ones you got to be careful about making sure you don't cross thread them. Just a little plastic bolt. Get it threaded down, you pop that tab down. That slides into the crank arm and also over the end, so that's kind of like a safety mechanism. And then start torquing down our bolts. It's not very difficult to install a Shimano Holotech crankset, but it gets messed up every once in a while, and you just got to be careful about, you know, the 3 steps and the preload bolt, the safety pin, and then torquing your bolts evenly. I'm going to torque this crank down. Torque specs 12 to 14 Newton meters. I'm just aligning the front derailleur and setting the height. So I want this outer plate in line with the chain ring. And then the height needs to be 2 to 3 millimeters. So this is a 3 millimeter Allen key. It doesn't fit in there, but look at this. I can fit my 2.5 right in there just fine. So I'm gonna route this front brake through the fork. I believe it's just routed straight through, so just poking it straight through. Running 160 rotors. This one's pointed up.
Bring it back inside.
Nice and snug. And we're gonna have to route these. We're gonna route these through the bars. So I'm gonna pull the pads out. We're gonna have to bleed these. I want to run them through the bars. I press the pistons all the way into the caliper. That's important. We want to make sure that we don't overfill our brake system. Put the bleed blocks in. Take our carbon blade.
Are you cutting the steer tube, Peter?
We're going to cut the steer tube. That is too much steer tube. So I've already measured it, marked it with the stem on there. I'm marking it level, then I'm measuring below that cap to get proper preload, taking into account the compression plug. Mount the steer tube in the vise. Show my little mark here.
Just so you know, Peter is going to don a mask so he don't breathe in the carbon dust.
Real gentle at the finish here. Light pressure. We don't want the carbon to fray. We're going to sand it. I'm going to lightly chamfer the edges, smooth out any rough edges. Any jagged edges. Pretty decent cut.